HOA tried to evict me from family land. They had no clue I audit federal land records for a living. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under my door like an unwelcome guest. Its crisp, official letterhead screamed Karen Hills Homeowners Association, and the words Notice of Eviction glared in bold red ink. I stood in my kitchen, coffee mug in hand, staring at the paper as if it might combust. Eviction? From my land. The land my great-grandfather tilled, where my grandmother planted her roses, where I'd spent every summer of my childhood chasing fireflies. The audacity was almost laughable. Almost. I'm Juniper Hale, 34, single, and by trade a federal land records auditor. My job is to untangle the messy web of property claims, deeds, and titles that stretch back centuries. I've seen disputes over fence lines turn into legal bloodbaths, and I've uncovered frauds that sent developers to jail. So when the Karen Hills HOA decided to flex their clipboard-wielding muscles on my 5-acre plot, they had no idea who they were poking. The trouble started 6 months ago when Karen Hills, a gated community of cookie-cutter McMansions, sprouted up on the edge of my family's land. My plot, a stubborn holdout of wild meadow and oak trees, was an eyesore to their manicured lawns and HOA-approved mailboxes. They'd been after me to sell since the first bulldozer rolled in. Offers came weakly polite at first, then pushy. I declined every one. This wasn't just dirt, it was legacy. My father's ashes were scattered here, beneath the old willow by the creek. No amount of money could uproot that. But the HOA didn't take kindly to no. First came the complaints. My wildflowers were unkempt. My gravel driveway lowered property values. Then they got creative, citing obscure bylaws about fence heights and exterior paint colors. My century-old farmhouse was apparently too rustic. I ignored them. I had better things to do like my actual job, which involved catching discrepancies in federal land grants. But this eviction notice? This was war. I called my best friend, Marcus, a real estate lawyer with a penchant for dramatic flair. Juniper, they can't just evict you, he said, his voice crackling through my ancient landline. They're bluffing. HOAs don't have that kind of power over private land. They claim I'm in violation of some annexation clause, I said, scanning the letter. They say my property was absorbed into their jurisdiction when they expanded the development. Marcus laughed, a sharp, barking sound. Absorbed? What is this, the Borg? Send me the letter. I'll tear it apart by lunch. But I wasn't waiting for Marcus. I had my own weapons. My job gave me access to the National Archives Land Records database, a labyrinth of dusty deeds and surveys that could make or break claims like this. If the HOA thought they could bully me off my land, they were about to learn a hard lesson. The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse, a squat brick building that smelled of old paper and regret. The clerk, a woman named Doreen with a perm that defied gravity, eyed me over her glasses. "You're that Hale girl, aren't you?" she said, her tone equal parts curiosity and pity. "Heard the HOA's got it out for you." "News travels fast," I muttered, handing her my request for the original plat maps of Karen Hills. Doreen shuffled off, returning with a stack of yellowed documents that smelled faintly of mildew. I spread them out on a table, my fingers tracing the boundaries of my family's land. The Hale plot was clear as day, deeded to my great-grandfather in 1892. No liens, no easements, no annexation. The HOA's claim was thinner than their community pool's diving board. But something caught my eye: a small, handwritten note on a 1960s survey. Boundary adjustment pending. See file 47B. My stomach twisted. Pending adjustments were a red flag in my line of work. They often meant someone, somewhere, had tried to fudge the lines, usually for profit. I asked Doreen for file 47B. She frowned. "That's in the restricted section. You'll need a court order." "A court order?" I echoed. "For public records?" "HOA's got friends in high places," she said, lowering her voice. "They've been cozying up to Judge Harlan for years." Judge Harlan, of course. The man who'd greenlit the Karen Hills development despite local protests about wetlands destruction. I thanked Doreen and left, my mind racing. This wasn't just about my land anymore. The HOA was playing a bigger game, and I was going to find out what. Back home, I fired up my laptop and dove into the federal database. My access as an auditor gave me a backdoor to records most people couldn't touch: land grants, tax assessments, even old mining claims. I searched for Karen Hills and found a gold mine. Discrepancies in their expansion permits. The HOA had claimed an extra 20 acres in their latest phase, including my property, without filing the proper federal notices. Sloppy, arrogant, and very, very illegal. I was about to call Marcus with the news when my doorbell rang. Expecting a delivery, I opened the door to find a woman in a pastel blazer, her blonde bob so perfect it looked like it was glued on. She held a clipboard like a shield. "Ms. Hale? I'm Karen Whitaker, president of the Karen Hills HOA. May I come in?" Her name was actually Karen? I almost laughed. "Sure," I said, stepping aside. "But I'm keeping my pitchfork handy." She didn't smile. Instead, she perched on my couch, her eyes scanning my living room like she was appraising it for auction. "Ms. Hale, we've been more than patient. Your property is a blight on our community. The eviction notice is your final warning. Vacate by next month, or we'll escalate." "Escalate how?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "You going to send your lawnmower militia?" Her lips thinned. "We have legal grounds. Your land was annexed under Ordinance 12-4. You're in violation of our covenants." "Funny," I said, crossing my arms. "I checked the county records. My deed predates your ordinance by, a century. Care to explain?" Karen's smile was all teeth. "You're not as clever as you think, Ms. Hale. We have documentation, and we have Judge Harlan's support." There it was again, Judge Harlan. I wanted to push her, but I needed more ammo. "I'll consider my options," I said, ushering her out. As she left, I noticed a man in a pickup truck parked across the street, watching. He wasn't HOA. His truck was too beat up, his clothes too practical. A surveyor, maybe? Or something else. My gut told me he was trouble. That night, I couldn't sleep. The HOA's confidence gnawed at me. They weren't just bluffing, they had a plan. I dug deeper into the database, cross-referencing Judge Harlan's name with Karen Hills. That's when I found it. A 2018 land transfer, buried in a federal addendum, linking Harlan to a shell company that owned half the HOA's development firm. Conflict of interest didn't begin to cover it. This was corruption, plain and simple. The next day, I met Marcus at a diner, sliding a folder of printouts across the table. "They're dirty," I said. "Harlan's in their pocket, and they're fudging boundaries to gobble up land." Marcus whistled, flipping through the pages. "This is big, Junie. Like, federal investigation big. But you need hard proof. That file 47B you mentioned, get it? It's the key." I nodded, but my mind was on the man in the pickup. He'd been outside my house again that morning, taking photos. Not subtle. I decided to turn the tables. The next time I saw him, I'd confront him. 2 days later, I got my chance. He was parked near the creek, scribbling in a notebook. I marched over, heart pounding. "Hey," I called. "You lost." He looked up, startled. Mid-40s, weathered face, flannel shirt. Not what I expected. No," he said, shoving the notebook in his pocket. "Just checking the area." "For what?" I pressed. "The HOA send you." His eyes widened. "HOA? No, ma'am. Look, I'm not supposed to be here." He hesitated, then sighed. "Name's Tom. I'm a private investigator, hired by someone to look into the HOA's land deals." I froze. "Who hired you?" He shook his head. "Can't say, but they know the HOA's up to something shady. I saw your name on their hit list. Thought you might be in on it." "Me?" I laughed, incredulous. "They're trying to steal my land." Tom's face softened. "Then we're on the same side. Look, I've got dirt on them surveys that don't add up, bribes to county officials. But I need more. You got anything?" I weighed my options. Trusting a stranger was risky, but Tom's story checked out. The HOA was desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. "Meet me tomorrow," I said. "I'll show you what I've got." That night, I pulled file 47B's digital counterpart from a restricted federal archividant. Ask how. Let's just say auditors have their ways. It was a bombshell, a 1960s agreement between my great-uncle and a now-defunct developer, hinting at a partial land swap that was never finalized. The HOA had dug it up, forged a completion date, and used it to claim my property. It was clever. Illegal, but clever. When I showed Tom the file, his eyes lit up. "This is it," he said. "With this and my evidence, we can bury them." But the HOA wasn't done. The next morning, I woke to bulldozers at my fence line. Karen Whitaker stood there, smirking, as workers tore into my meadow. "You're too late, Ms. Hale," she called. The judge signed the order last night. Rage burned through me, but I kept my cool. You're on my land, I said, and I've got proof you're a fraud. Her smirk faltered, but only for a second. We'll see about that. I called Marcus, who filed an emergency injunction. Tom and I spent the day compiling our evidence me records, his photos, witness statements from neighbors who'd been bullied into selling. By nightfall, we had a case airtight enough to choke a courtroom. The hearing was a circus. Karen Whitaker played the victim, claiming I was a disruptive element. Judge Harlan, red-faced and sweating, tried to dismiss our evidence. But Marcus was relentless, presenting the forged land swap and Harlan's ties to the HOA's developer. The courtroom gasped when Tom took the stand, revealing he'd been hired by none other than Doreen, the courthouse clerk, who'd grown sick of the HOA's corruption. The judge's gavel fell like a guillotine. The HOA's annexation was ruled invalid, their permits revoked. My land was safe. Karen Whitaker stormed out, her clipboard abandoned. I should have felt triumphant. But that night, standing by the willow where my father's ashes lay, I felt hollow. The meadow was scarred from the bulldozers. The roses my grandmother planted were gone. Victory had saved my land, but it couldn't restore what was lost. I sat by the creek, tears falling, as fireflies danced in the dark. Legacy wasn't just land, it was memory, and some memories were now just dirt. The courtroom victory felt like a hollow trophy as I stood by the creek, the fireflies flickering like ghosts of better days. My land was mine again, but the scars left by the Karen Hills HOA's bulldozers ran deeper than the soil. The meadow, once a riot of wildflowers, was churned into mud. My grandmother's rose bushes, their thorns fierce as her spirit, were gone. I'd won the battle, but the war had cost me pieces of my heart. The next morning, I met Tom at the diner to tie up loose ends. His battered notebook was open, filled with scrawled notes and coffee stains. "You did good, Hale," he said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "This has everything, me photos, recordings, the works. If the HOA tries again, this'll bury them." I pocketed the drive, but something in his tone felt off. His eyes darted to the window, like he was expecting someone. "Who hired you, really?" I asked, leaning forward. "Doreen's a clerk, not a mastermind. There's more to this." Tom sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "You don't miss much, do you?" "All right. It wasn't just Doreen. She was the front. The real client's a developer big shot from out of state. They're gunning for Karen Hill's parent company, want to tank their stock before a hostile takeover. Your land was just collateral." My stomach dropped. Collateral? So I was a pawn in some corporate chess game. "Not a pawn," he said quickly. "A knight. You took down the HOA's scam. My client got what they wanted, dirt on Karen Hills. Win-win. Win-win." I snapped, my voice rising. Diners glanced our way. "My land's trashed, Tom. My family's legacy is in pieces. You used me." He looked away, guilt etched into his weathered face. "I didn't know it'd go this far. I'm sorry, Juniper. For what it's worth, you're the toughest person I've ever met." I wanted to throw his apology back in his face, but I was too tired. I grabbed the USB and left, the bell above the diner door jingling like a mockery of closure. Tom's betrayal stung, but it made sense. The HOA wasn't the only predator circling my land. Vultures came in all forms: clipboards, pickup trucks, or corporate suits. Back home, I expected quiet. Instead, I found a new letter taped to my door. No letterhead this time, just a scrawled note. "You think you've won? We're not done." No signature, but the venom screamed Karen Whitaker. I crumpled it, my pulse racing. The HOA had lost their legal leverage, but people like Karen didn't slink away. They lashed out. I called Marcus, who was already 3 coffees deep into his morning. "They're not giving up," I said, reading him the note. "What's their next move?" "Petty revenge," he said. "Vandalism, harassment, maybe a smear campaign. File a restraining order against Whitaker. And get a security camera. I don't trust these people." I took his advice, installing a cheap camera from the hardware store. That night, it caught its first guest, a figure in a hoodie spraying paint across my barn. The footage was grainy, but the pastel blazer peeking out gave her away. "Karen." I filed a police report, but the sheriff, a golf buddy of Judge Harlan, shrugged it off as kids pranking. Small towns and their loyalties. The harassment escalated. My mailbox was smashed. My driveway was littered with nails. Anonymous posts on the Karen Hills community forum called me a squatter, and worse. I stopped sleeping, jumping at every creak in the old farmhouse. My job suffered. I missed a deadline on a federal audit, earning a warning from my boss. The HOA was grinding me down, and they knew it. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. One morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox, not a threat, but a handwritten letter from a woman named Lila Monroe. She claimed to be a former Karen Hills resident, driven out by the HOA's tactics. "They did the same to me," she wrote. "Forced me to sell my home for pennies. I know what you're fighting for. Let me help." I was skeptical. Tom's betrayal had left me wary of allies. But Lila's story checked out. A quick search in the federal database showed her property, a modest lot on the edge of Karen Hills, sold under duress 2 years ago. I called her, and her voice, warm, weathered, tinged with anger, felt like a lifeline. "They're monsters," Lila said. "Karen Whitaker and her cronies bank on people giving up. But you didn't. That's why they're scared." "Scared?" I scoffed. "They're the ones terrorizing me." "They know you've got evidence," she said. "That USB from your PI friend? It's not just about your land. It's got proof of their whole operation: bribes, forgeries, tax evasion. They're desperate to shut you up." Lila's words lit a spark. I'd been playing defense, but maybe it was time to go on the offensive. Lila offered to connect me with other ex-residents who'd been bullied out. Together, we could build a class action lawsuit, expose the HOA's corruption, and maybe even take down Judge Harlan. We met in secret at a coffee shop 2 towns over. Lila was in her 60s, with kind eyes and a steely resolve. She brought 3 others, retirees, all with stories of HOA intimidation. One, a widower named Carl, had lost his home after refusing to pay a fine for unapproved garden gnomes. "They took everything," he said, his voice breaking. "My wife's ashes were in that house." Their pain mirrored mine, but it also fueled me. We pooled our evidence, my federal records, Tom's USB, Lila's old contracts, Carl's photos of harassment. Marcus jumped in, pro bono, smelling blood. "This is bigger than Karen Hills," he said. "We're talking RICO-level charges." The lawsuit hit the HOA like a freight train. We filed in federal court, bypassing Harlan's cronies. The media caught wind, and soon Karen Hills was national news. HOA horror, small-town tyranny exposed. Karen Whitaker's face was plastered on every outlet, her smug smile replaced by panic. The parent company's stock plummeted, just as Tom's mysterious client had wanted. I didn't care about their game anymore. This was for Lila, Carl, my grandmother's roses, my father's ashes. But victory came at a cost. The night before the trial, my farmhouse burned. The fire department called it arson, but no evidence pointed to Karen or the HOA. I stood in the ashes, clutching the only thing I'd saved: a photo of my dad under the willow. Everything else was gone. My records, my furniture, my childhood. The land was still mine, but the home was a memory. The trial was brutal. Karen Whitaker took the stand, deflecting blame, painting herself as a community servant. But our evidence was ironclad. The forged land swap, the bribes, the harassment, it all came out. Judge Harlan resigned in disgrace. The HOA was dissolved, its assets seized to compensate victims. Lila got enough to buy a new home. Carl planted gnomes on his rented lawn, a quiet rebellion. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. The land was mine, but it was a graveyard of loss. I walked to the creek one last time, the willow's branches swaying in the wind. I scattered the photo's ashes there, letting my father join the earth he'd loved. Then I left. I sold the land to a conservation trust, ensuring no HOA could ever touch it again. It wasn't home anymore. It was a wound. Months later, I got a call from Tom. He'd tracked me down to my new apartment in the city. "I heard about the fire," he said. "I'm sorry, Juniper. I never meant." "Save it," I cut him off. "You got what you wanted." "So did I. We're done." I hung up, staring out my window at the concrete jungle. The fight had changed me. I was tougher, yes, but also lonelier. Legacy wasn't land or houses or roses. It was the people you fought for, the memories you carried, the scars you bore. I'd saved my father's land, but I'd lost my home. And that was the bitterest pill of all. What do you think? Was Juniper right to fight so hard for her land, even at such a personal cost? Was the HOA's downfall justice, or just another cycle of revenge? Share your thoughts on where the line between right and wrong lies in this messy, human struggle.